When you first think about Australian food, you may imagine something simple and familiar. But the moment you begin to travel deeper into Australia, you quickly realize that the real taste of this country is not defined by one single dish. It is shaped by regions, coastlines, farms, vineyards, bakeries, markets, and communities that give every place its own identity. In this episode, you are going to explore 10 regional flavors that help you understand Australia in a much deeper way. This matters because food is one of the most powerful ways to connect with a place. When you taste what locals love, you do not just eat. You begin to understand history, climate, culture, migration, lifestyle, and the stories that make each region feel different from the next. The first flavor you need to experience is fresh oysters from South Australia. When you think about places like the Eyre Peninsula and Coffin Bay, you begin to understand how strongly Australian food can be shaped by the sea. Here, the flavor is not just about luxury. It is about freshness, clean ocean water, and the pride of coastal communities whose identity is tied to seafood. When you sit close to the shoreline and imagine tasting oysters that reflect the waters around them, you begin to see how regional food in Australia is often about simplicity done beautifully. Some places do not need to impress you with complexity. They win you over with purity. The second flavor is wine country produce, especially in regions like the Barossa and Margaret River, where food and wine belong together. When you explore these regions, you start to understand that wine country is not only about what is in the glass, it is also about olives, cheese, bread, seasonal produce, vineyard lunches, and the beauty of slowing down long enough to enjoy where you are. In these places, flavor is connected to land, farming, and hospitality. You are not simply tasting products. You are stepping into a lifestyle where the meal, the landscape, and the local culture all belong to the same story. The third flavor you should notice is the richness of Tasmania. This comes through in things like berries, orchard fruit, dairy, honey, cheese, and cool climate produce that feels clean, delicate, and deeply regional. Tasmania reminds you that food can feel refined without becoming distant. There is a quiet confidence in flavors that come from colder air, cleaner water, and smaller-scale regional pride. When you think about Tasmania, you begin to feel how a place can shape taste in a very gentle but memorable way. The result is often food that stays in your memory because it feels calm, pure, and beautifully connected to its environment. The fourth flavor is Australian bakery culture. This may seem simple at first, but it tells a very honest story about everyday life in Australia. Local bakeries are part of the rhythm of both towns and suburbs, and the meat pie stands out as one of the country's most familiar and loved foods. When you walk into a bakery and see warm pies, sausage rolls, slices, and fresh bread behind the glass, you are stepping into something that feels deeply local. This is not only about food, it is about habit, comfort, affordability, and the kind of small pleasure people return to again and again. Sometimes the real taste of a country is found in the places that feel ordinary to locals, but unforgettable to visitors. The fifth flavor is native Australian ingredients. If you want to understand Australian food more deeply, you need to look beyond imported traditions and notice what belongs uniquely to this land. Ingredients such as wattle seed, lemon myrtle, finger lime, and saltbush open the door to a more distinctively Australian food identity. These flavors matter not only because they taste different, but because they help tell a fuller story of place and heritage. When you encounter native ingredients, you begin to realize that Australian food is not only about what has arrived from elsewhere, it is also about rediscovering what has always been here. The sixth flavor is tropical produce from Queensland. In warmer parts of Australia, food begins to feel brighter, juicier, and more playful. Tropical fruits and fresh produce bring color and energy to the table in a way that instantly reflects climate. When you think about this part of Australia, you begin to understand how sunlight itself can seem present in the food. Queensland helps you see that regional flavor is not only about recipes. It is also about weather, abundance, freshness, and the visual joy of ingredients that feel alive. Some regions feed you through comfort. Others feed you through brightness. The seventh flavor is coffee and cafe culture. You cannot talk honestly about modern Australia without talking about coffee. Across cities, towns, and regional stops, coffee has become part of everyday rhythm and identity. It is connected to local cafes, brunch culture, conversation, and the small rituals that shape ordinary life. This matters because regional flavor is not only about iconic dishes, it is also about habits. It is about what people line up for in the morning and what they care about enough to debate. When you step into Australian cafe culture, you begin to see that taste is often built into routine. Some flavors become powerful because they are part of daily belonging. The eighth flavor is found in farmers' markets and country cafes. These places often give you one of the most honest views of regional Australia because they bring you closer to growers, producers, bakers, and local makers. When you walk through a market or stop in a country cafe, you do not feel as though you are being sold a polished version of the region. You feel closer to the real thing. Handmade jams, local olive oils, fresh produce, regional cheeses, warm pies, and seasonal fruit all tell you something about the place they come from. This is where food becomes human. It becomes local in the most direct way possible. The ninth flavor is coastal seafood and beachside dining. Australia is surrounded by coastline, and that shapes not only its geography but also its food identity. There is something unmistakably Australian about the idea of eating simply prepared seafood close to the water, while feeling that the setting is part of the meal itself. In moments like that, food becomes connected to freedom, light, travel, and the lifestyle of the coast. You begin to realize that seafood in Australia is often not just a menu item. It is a reflection of place. It reminds you that in this country, flavor and landscape often sit side by side. The 10th flavor is the regional mix itself. The real lesson is not that one dish defines Australia. It is that Australian food becomes more interesting the more regional it gets. The farther you move beyond the obvious and the more carefully you pay attention to local specialties, the more the country reveals itself. Some places are shaped by seafood. Others are shaped by wine, orchards, tropical produce, cafe culture, baking traditions, or native ingredients. Together, these layers form a food identity that is diverse, evolving, and deeply connected to place. This is what makes Australian food special. It is not one story. It is many local stories living side by side. So as you begin this journey through Australian food, the most important thing to remember is this. If you really want to taste Australia, you should not only ask what Australians eat. You should ask where the food comes from, who grows it, who makes it, what the climate allows, what the coastline offers, what the farms produce, and what locals keep returning to with pride. That is where the real story begins. Regional flavors help you experience Australia not as one flat food identity, but as a collection of living local cultures shaped by land, sea, weather, migration, and memory. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to keep discovering Australia through food, wine, coffee, towns, markets, coastal flavors, and local stories, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps the channel grow and helps bring more thoughtful Australia-focused content to people who want to explore the country more deeply.